I would love to say hello to everyone. So please say hi in the chat. If you can let me know maybe where you're from or where you're tuning in from. And if you want to let me know something about your human design as well, I would love to know a little bit about you. So let me know your energy type or your profile. Washington, Florida. Oh, good. Yeah, I hope this is a good time for everyone in the US and the UK. Melbourne, you're up early. Beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you all. Beautiful projector. Someone from Turkey. We've got a manifester. Bali. Oh my gosh, I think it's early in Bali too. Oh, hi, Carol. Nice to see you, hon. Beautiful. So I'm going to share my screen with you all today. So let me just get that set up. And sorry if this takes me just a second. I'm not. Okay. Can everyone? Oh, I've lost the chat though. Hold on. Few tabs. I don't know if I can still see the chat while I'm sharing. Gittis, do you know if I can?
Yes. So I see your all this presentation. So you like to share. Okay, now it's okay.
Yeah, but I can't see. I just can't see the chat. But that's okay. I can just.
If there's gonna be some questions, maybe Victoria or me just can read them. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. All right. So
thank you.
Let me do that again. Oh, maybe it's just the window. Okay. So can everyone see this? Okay. So I'll just introduce myself. Anyone who doesn't know me, so I'm Amy. I'm going to share a little bit more about my human design than I normally would because I know you're all really well versed in human design. Normally, I wouldn't share this much. So I'm a 5/1 splenic authority quad right projector. I think the quad right piece is really important for you to know because what I'm going to talk about today is sort of my journey in business, and I want to give you examples of things that I have done and things that I haven't done, because something I always say to my students about my journey in business is that I've kind of built my business doing the opposite of what we're all kind of told to do in a lot of ways. Like there's so many things where I think people in traditional business or traditional marketing would kind of look at what I've done and think, you know, it doesn't make sense, right? It's not logical. But everything I've done in my business is a reflection of my design, and particularly being a quad right. Yeah, let me know in the chat if anyone doesn't know what it means to be a quad right as well. And yeah, I'll go through that. I think I'm just sharing. Sorry, I'm just going to change this sharing again. Sorry, guys. I'm not used to Teams. This is right. Let me just come back. Here we go. Okay, I think that's better now. So my life theme is the left angle cross of prevention. I have my conscious sun in gate 15, which you would know is the gate of extremes. And I'm definitely someone who does go to the extremes of things. And, you know, it's a challenge, but it's also a really beautiful gift. I have the channels of acceptance, awakening, struggle, and judgment. And I'm a Cancer Sun, Pisces Moon, and a Leo rising. And I also have a ton of Gemini energy in my chart. So like so much of my business and the work that I do actually reflects the Gemini placements in my chart. I'm a Gemini midheaven, Jupiter in Gemini. I also have a ton of Capricorn for anyone who understands astrology. And so I've been working with human design since 2018. I started my business in June 2018. And prior to that, I was working in e-commerce fashion, and I was in a HR business admin type role. I'd worked in fashion companies, like that was mostly what my career was in, which as you can imagine is a very hectic kind of fast-paced industry, especially for a projector. And so now I teach human design and astrology, and then I also work with business owners, and I kind of weave in like human design and astrology and everything else that I've studied, yeah, into that work. So I wanted to start with this quote for you. This has probably been the most impactful piece of advice that I received when starting my business, especially again as a projector, is to rest, don't quit. And this is something, you know, that I come back to all the time. And it's something that I talk about with my clients all the time. And, you know, especially if you're someone who is, maybe you're a generator who goes through your plateaus, maybe you're an undefined sacral like me, where you have periods where you need to really stop and rest. I want to invite everyone to like come back to this and think about this, like rest, don't quit. You know, I even had this written on my little whiteboard for quite a while in the beginning of my business, because, you know, without a doubt, like there's going to be times for everyone where you probably want to quit for some reason, right? There'll be periods of time where something doesn't work the way you think it should, or something's not going the way you mentally would like it to go. And, you know, just stopping and resting and like coming back with fresh eyes and a fresh perspective, I think can make all the difference. And this is another quote that I love, and I share this with all of my business courses, and then pretty much all of my trainings. This is my favorite quote, and I think this really sums up what human design allows us to do. And so this is a George Bernard Shaw quote, and he says, "The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. So therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man." And I think this is the benefit that we all get in understanding our designs. Like we all have a huge advantage being in business and having an understanding of human design, in that we have this map that tells us how we work in the most intimate way, right? And this map that really helps us live our most unreasonable life. So we get to create the businesses that reflect that, you know, and it's not about us adapting ourselves to fit the world. It's about us creating a business and a world around us that suits who we are at the core. And so I just want to start with a few points. And so like I mentioned, I really today want to go through like some of like the key things I have not done in my business. And I hope it can be really affirming to you, like if those things don't feel right for you. And then I want to go through the key things that I have done and the things I've really prioritized that I feel have really like moved the needle forward for me in business. But I want to invite you to keep in mind that there's no one right way, right? So I hope you can take everything I talk about today and kind of filter it through your own design, you know, because what works for me might not always work for other people, right? Because you have this, you know, you're a very unique, differentiated being. You have your own way of being. So it's more about, I think, uncovering your way than ever mimicking or replicating someone else's way. And so we want your business and everything you're creating to actually be a reflection of you and who you are, rather than a reflection of me or a reflection of someone else. And what I really love to encourage people to do is that rather than trying to be someone that you're not, is to focus more on just sharing who you really are with the world, like getting really intimate. You know, I'm sure everyone here is really intimate with their not self and their true self. You know, I think that is like the biggest path to success, right? If you understand who you're not and you understand who you actually are, you can focus more on sharing that part of who you are with the world, and starting to pay attention more to the not self. You know, with the not self, I think it's important to know in business, like business will bring up all of your not self stuff, right? Like I find even now in my business, old not self patterns that I thought I had worked through, they're cyclical, right? So I feel like I might work through something and then it comes back in another way, right? The pattern kind of reemerges, and the not self is tricky, it's manipulative, it's sneaky, right? And I think the not self can become very smart at hiding itself behind like patterns and behaviors that appear to be like healthy, right? I spoke about this recently on my Instagram, but a big not self pattern of mine is like constantly trying to improve myself as someone with an undefined ego, and being a first line profile. Like I love to study and I love to learn, and that's a big part of who I am, but my not self can really hijack that. and my not self can distort that desire to go deep, you know, that first line need to get to the foundations. My not self can really distort that, and it becomes this really unhealthy obsession with needing to fix myself all the time and needing to improve myself all the time. And so I've had to become super aware of that in my business, right? Because it's a distraction. So every time I fall into that, and again, it's cyclical, so I'll feel like I've worked through it and then it comes back. Every time I fall into that, it's distracting me from the work I'm really here to do. So yeah, anyway, that was, sorry, off on a tangent. And so like I said at the beginning, I've pretty much built my business doing almost the opposite of all traditional and business marketing advice. But at the same time, I do want to say I have taken a ton of traditional business education, a ton of traditional marketing education. And what I think the blessing of human design is that it's allowed me to, I can consume like strategic courses, but I run it all through my filter. And then I kind of adapt it to what feels good for me, what my authority shows me my next step should be, what my authority even shows me like what's relevant to me. And then, you know, what do I want to listen to? And then what do I basically want to ignore is what my authority helps me do. Yeah, so I want to start by sharing some things of like what I haven't done in business, and I hope that this can be affirming. Let me know in the chat if any of these things, if you felt like, no, I'm not going to do these things as well. So what I haven't done is I haven't forced consistency in my business, particularly when it comes to content creation. And this is a really tricky one because in the social media world, all of the social media platforms basically celebrate consistency, and you are rewarded for consistency. And it's something that I've struggled with at times, right? Like this knowing that, well, I'm a quadrate projector, I'm not designed for consistency. Trying to be consistent with my content creation, trying to force that is a really quick route for me into burnout and a really big distraction from me from the actual work that I do with clients. So I've really not forced consistency. I have tried to show up regularly though, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. I haven't tried to build multiple platforms at once too. I actually think this can be a really big distraction for most people. You know, if you're, you know, maybe you're a Manny Jan or like there's definitely nuance to this, but I think for most people building one platform at once is really wise. So for me, it was Instagram. For someone else, it might be LinkedIn, it might be Pinterest, it might be Facebook, right? But I really find like having that one kind of channel that you focus on in the beginning is really, really helpful. And then I've sort of slowly branched out into other platforms. I haven't followed any business or marketing advice like to a T, right? So any courses that I take, you know, like there's lots of people in marketing who I really admire. Like I love Seth Godin, I love Don Miller, like, but I consume their content in a way that it's always filtered. It's always filtered, and I would never kind of take something from what they teach and apply it 100% to my business. I pick and choose. I haven't done what others have told me to do, you know, even because I work with coaches a lot. I've had a lot of coaches, a lot of mentors, and there's been many, many times in my business where I've not I've not listened to the advice that I've been given. I mean, I am a channel of judgment person, so I do kind of have, anyway, things with authority. But I haven't done like everything I've been told, right? Even if it seemed logical, even if it was like, yeah, that makes sense, that feels smart, but something in my body was telling me like, no, that's not for you. No, that doesn't feel right. Like I've never betrayed my intuition and my body over what someone else has told me to do. I definitely haven't hustled my way to success. And anyone who knows my work knows that coherence over hustle is like my ethos in my business. And I'm actually quite not anti, but I really don't resonate with hustle culture. I think hustling for most people is actually a distraction. I think it's a distraction of the mind. And for most of us, actually learning to stop and wait and see what our body shows us is it can seem like a slower route, but it's actually a much faster path in the long run because you're minimizing all of that distraction and you're minimizing like ineffective uses of your energy. And I haven't focused on doing more and being more productive. In fact, in my business, like everything is as simple as it can be. Like I really believe that simple is scalable. So like I run my business in a way that is really lean, it's simple. Like I only have a few people helping me. I don't have like complex behind the scenes things, and I pretty much know how to do everything in my business as well. Like that's been something for me that's been really important. Like I never want to feel like I don't understand how something's working. So I've kind of made it that works for me anyway, having like an overarching view and understanding all the moving parts, but also making sure, you know, because I do have an understanding, I can kind of spot as a projector like where something might be more complex than it needs to be. And so yeah, simple has always been my motto. So the things I have done, and I think I've got like 8 or 9 points that we can discuss. And again, let me know in the chat, and I'll read through it at the end, like if any of this resonates. And I'm going to start with the really unsexy things first, right? I think everyone wants to jump into like, what are the keys? Like what's the like magic, you know, the magic pill for business, right? And I think we actually need to start with the really unsexy things, which is deconditioning. And like I said at the beginning, like when you come into business, it is like a pressure cooker for your own deconditioning. I have found in my experience, and I watch it with clients, like it will bring up your not self will really come to the forefront, right? And I think it can almost be like an accelerated deconditioning process. But I really think, and I'm sure most of you would agree, that deconditioning should be the number one priority, because this is what allows you, one, to tap into your authority so you can be making decisions for yourself. And that's what really gives you the ability to take strategic advice, to take, you know, to watch what other people are doing, to take courses, and then always filter it through your own lens. Like authority really is the key to that. But through deconditioning, you get to tap into your signature, you get to taste what your signature actually feels like. And it's also what allows you to tap into passenger consciousness. And let me know in the chat if there's anyone who doesn't know what passenger consciousness is, and I'll explain. I can go into more detail at the end, but passenger consciousness is like the purpose of human design, right? Like I think it's really easy for people to focus on, you know, how does human design bring me success, right? What are the magic codes in my chart? Really, human design is a system for embodiment, and passenger consciousness is really a state where your mind, we decommission your mind from decision making. Your mind gets into the back seat of the car and becomes the passenger. And it's really then your body and that electromagnetic frequency from your heart that is leading the way. And that's kind of, you know, that's the secret sauce. Like passenger consciousness is the magic, right? For me, when I'm in that passenger consciousness state, like, again, like I just find myself doing things, everything that's important gets done. Often I'm doing things in an order that isn't super logical. Maybe, you know, logically I should do things in this way, but for some reason I just find my body doing something else, right? And it's always like when I tap into that state, which isn't all the time, like I don't think anyone's in passenger consciousness all the time, but the things that I create from that state, they're the things that seem to really land, and they seem to be the things that become the most magnetic in my business. The offers that are kind of born from that state are always the offers that feel like people seem to want more, right? And I've watched myself create things from my mind in the past, and like crickets, like, or maybe like 1 or 2 people want to join, or like not many people, right? Like people can feel the difference. And so I really think, like, again, it sounds really unsexy, but this is probably the piece that's going to make the biggest difference. And really, you know, through deconditioning as well, like deconditioning is a pretty radical act in the world that we live in, right? And you have to get comfortable doing things, like, again, like me doing things in the opposite way to what I was told wasn't always comfortable. It was actually quite uncomfortable. And I definitely had periods where I would doubt myself, you know. And I think if you know that you're deconditioning, if you're aware of your not self, if you're tapped into your authority, and you know you're tapping into passenger consciousness, it gives you this ability to just kind of trust yourself more. But yeah, it's certain, you know, deconditioning certainly isn't comfortable, and doing trusting your authority, trusting passenger consciousness isn't always comfortable as well. This is another really unsexy thing, but I've also from the beginning really prioritized my nervous system, because what can happen is if you're coming into business and you have a nervous system set point of survival and struggle, you'll just keep recreating that in your business, right? And again, I think this needs to come from beyond your deconditioning, your human design deconditioning. I think this is almost something that goes even deeper. But you don't want to keep creating that sense of struggle, right? Or the sense of not enoughness. But if that's what you've come from, that's what your nervous system actually finds safety in. And what can happen is if you're stretching into more, right? If you're stretching into more income, more clients, if that's not common for you, if that's new for you, your nervous system can actually think that that's not safe. And that's when things like self-sabotage happen. That's when you'll create problems, right? So I really think prioritizing like nervous system support. My modality of choice is network spinal analysis, which I have done since 2018. I started doing it. And whenever I have seasons where maybe I'm launching something that's really important to me, like a new product or a new offering, I will do 2 network spinal sessions a week. Like I will up that and I will make that a priority. And even back in 2018, when my business was making like no money, I prioritized this over other things, and I think it's made all the difference. So I think having something that you can go to, network spinal analysis. So it was created by Donnie Epstein. He's amazing. He's the coach of Tony Robbins. And if you haven't heard of him, like I'm so immersed in his work. I definitely recommend, looking into him and his work, because it's incredible and it's made all the difference for me. And then, so like I said at the beginning, I've also really prioritized coherence over hustle. And so when I say this, when I feel like I haven't hustled, it doesn't mean I have like sat around not doing anything as well. Like I do a lot in my business. I take a lot of action. I am an energy projector. I do have a defined route. So I do have an ability. I have that momentum when something's correct for me to, to take quite incredible action. But I do it from a place of coherence, right? And I try to do it as much as I can from that place of passenger consciousness. So, and like I said at the beginning, I really see hustle like that mindset of like, if I just do, right? If I'm just busy with all the things, right? If I'm productive all day, I'm going to move the needle forward. What I actually see is that kind of operating from that state is actually a huge distraction. And for most of us, it's way more effective to stop, wait, listen to your body, and, really focus on alignment and coherence over productivity or just being busy, right? Busyness. And so, I find when I'm operating from that state of coherence as well, like things just tend to work out as well. Like, whereas when I'm operating from hustle, which for me is a real dysfunction of my mind, everything feels harder. I meet resistance. Things just don't work. It's like, I don't get to tap into that sense of ease and effortlessness that I do when I'm in coherence, right? And so when I'm operating in coherence with my own design, opportunities come my way, unexpected opportunities. People reach out, I meet people synchronistically. And I seem to have more time as well, right? More time and space to actually live my life. So prioritizing coherence over hustle is a big one for me. I personally, so like I said at the beginning, not embraced consistency at all. So I've focused on working with my energy and aiming for regularity over consistency. So it's tricky in social media because, like I said, they do reward consistency. But, again, I hope this can be really affirming. But even in the beginning of my business, I would often, I might have a week where I posted 2 or 3 times, and then I would have a couple of weeks where I couldn't, right? Because I was working full time still. I just didn't have the energy. And I think I want to affirm to everyone that like you can trust your energy and how you feel around that. And especially if you're a projector, a manifestor, or a reflector, like so much of your success and alignment is going to depend on you deconditioning your sacral. And so you just want to be really mindful of that, right? you know, and that dysfunction of the cycle of not knowing when enough's enough, you know. And if you're applying that to social media, it's probably not going to land, and it's probably not going to have the same impact that you want it to have, or be received in the same way. Like, I think we're realizing more and more, like, people can feel our energy, you know. So rather than consistency, focusing on just showing up kind of regularly as much as you can, but also really honoring your energy. And I always advise people to work seasonally. You know, I apply this to all areas of my business. I look at everything as seasonal. So I'll have seasons where I might be doing more work, and then I have seasons where I'm doing less work. I might have seasons where there's a lot more income coming into the business, and then seasons where if I'm creating something new, maybe there's less. You know, I look at everything as having a very natural ebb and flow, and that being okay, right? Rather than aiming for like it needing to be this all the time, or needing to be like on this straight trajectory up, right? As well. Like, I really see growth happening like that as well. And that works perfectly for me as a projector. So look at working with your energy. Also, you know, you have the ability, again, as someone who understands your own design and your own chart, like, set your schedule up, you know, set your schedule up in a way that supports you. Like, for me as a quad right in business, I need heaps of flexibility and spaciousness. And if I don't have that, I can't really guide my clients in the way that, you know, to my best ability. So I've, from the beginning, as well as for as long as I could, set my schedule up to support me. And for me, that actually means mostly just working Tuesday to Thursday. I personally like to work with the energy of the days of the week and have like really slow Mondays, really slow Fridays. Sometimes I'll do a bit of work on a Saturday, which is ruled by Saturn. But mostly what works for me is just working those 3 days. And again, I had to face like a lot of judgment around that from people around me. You know, people don't get it. People in the traditional business world, it's like, what do you mean? You mustn't be committed to your business, right? You mustn't love the work that you do if you don't want to work 6-7 days a week and work 70 hours a week. And I know as a projector, and I think this applies for most people, but I know as a projector, if I tried to keep work in the way that the world told me to, I would just end up burnt out, and then no one benefits, right? So yeah, if you can, as much as you can, like, honor your seasons and cycles, whatever they might be for you. They might not be as extreme as they are, you know, for me. But yeah, honor that as much as you can. This is probably one of the most important things I think I've done from like a strategic, non-energy kind of lens. And this is something I personally have focused on from the beginning. You know, in my career before coming into this business, I did work closely with the marketing teams in the businesses that I worked for. So I did have an understanding of marketing before I started my own business. And one thing I did from the beginning was really focused on building a recognizable brand. And I actually think that really supported me to show up, you know, less consistently, right? Because when I did show up and when I did put work out into the world, like, people could feel it was me, you know. And it's feedback I get all the time. It's feedback I've received since day one, like, that there was something about the way, again, so I've mostly built Instagram, right? And Instagram's a visual platform. But there was something about the way, like, I put things together on Instagram that people could just recognize it was me. And Gittis knows this, like, from working together on my reports, like, I am like, for fonts and colors, like, I'm very specific about the things that are used in my business and the things that are on my website. Like, I have to have the certain fonts and colors, and it probably annoys people at times, but it's important to me because it's a part of my brand, right? Even the fonts I'm using on this, you know, I want every single thing, every touch point a person has with me, I want it to feel like my energy. And so, you know, from the beginning, I really intentionally crafted a brand that feels like my energy as well. Like, I haven't tried to create a brand that I think will be successful, or that I see other people doing, you know, or that, you know, logically feels good. Like, I very intentionally use like mostly kind of soft colors, right? Like, my branding is it's meant to be a real reflection of like my essence as a person. And what I've always wanted is that if someone follows me on Instagram or has seen my website and then they meet me in real life, I want it to feel coherent, right? I want it to just feel like that's been an extension of me. And, I think this is really important because people actually buy into you, right? They're not really buying into the systems that you use, right? Like, so for most people that come to me and want to work with me, it's, yes, the fact that I use astrology and human design is important, but mostly it's like something they feel in my energy. It's something about me that they want to work with me, because there's tons of people out there who work with astrology and who work with human design, right? And so I think you want to be mindful of that. And I mean, when I talk about building a recognizable brand, this doesn't mean like create something that is like super rigid, and it has to be like neat and structured or anything. Like, if your brand is kind of messy and chaotic, or it's bright and colorful, like, then that's just what it is, right? I have clients who have all sorts of things going on. It doesn't mean it has to be this perfectly curated, aesthetic feed. Like, just creating like a sense of like, yeah, this is who I am. And I also want to think, this is something I see a lot in the human design industry as well. And I've worked on this with a lot of clients, is I think you also don't want to become too identified or enmeshed with human design as the system being at the forefront of your brand. I think, you're so much more than the systems that you use, right? And people will be coming to you for your unique perspective, maybe the other skills that you have, the life experiences that you have. Like, human design is an incredible system and modality and a tool that you get to draw on, right? And you're an incredible practitioner of that system. But there's so much more about you that people can buy into. So, but I think a lot of people in our industry lead with human design at the front. And, that might have worked over the last few years while human design was kind of newer to the industry, but it's becoming like such a popular industry, right? There's more and more people coming to human design every day. So it's like you need to bring the things to the front of your brand that make you different, right? And the things that about you that people will resonate with. So I share all kinds of things as part of my brand. Like, if anyone follows me and watches my stories, you'll see I've recently been talking about fantasy fiction, which has nothing to do with my work, nothing to do with my business, but it's a big part of who I am. And like, it's actually been really incredible. I'm having so many really beautiful conversations. People are messaging me just to talk about these books and things like that. And it's become like a way that, again, people like buying into me a little bit more and getting to know who I am a little bit more. And I've also, so this is another more strategic thing, I've focused on solving internal problems over external problems. And I speak to this in my marketing. So when we're selling, when we're crafting like a sales page, when you're talking about your offers, if you're talking about your reports that you do through body graph charts, I think it's important to recognize that there are external problems and then there are internal problems. And people will always be more aware of the external problems that they have, but they actually buy solutions to their internal problems. So we want to be more speaking to that, or highlighting, I don't really believe in pain point marketing, but highlighting how your specific report or your offer helps with some kind of internal problem that they might have. So an example I've used here is, an external problem could be that someone wants to make more money, right? They want to understand their human design because they want to make more money. The internal problem could be that they feel frustrated because they're working so hard and they're not seeing results, right? So then you could speak more to the internal problem, and that's more what people are going to, are more likely to buy, to solve, right? And again, with this, it can be really helpful to actually like survey your audience and your people, right? Like, don't be afraid to do market research. I think it can actually be really, really incredible. And also when it comes to like these internal and external problems, like there might be one external problems and you can see 2 or 3 internal problems, right? And so then you might want to go out and kind of test different problems, right? You might focus on speaking to one internal problem for a month and just see how that feels, see how it goes sales wise. And then you might shift to speaking to another internal problem. Like, you're not locked into these things forever. And I definitely recommend, experimenting with it. And like even with sales pages, like if you have courses, like you can always be adapting and changing things based on the feedback you're getting, right? So yeah, but don't be afraid to like ask your clients, ask your Instagram audience, like collect data, and that will help you be aware of like what problems are people kind of coming to me for, like what solutions are they looking for from me. And so like I said this at the beginning, but I really believe focusing on one platform and one offer at a time. And I know all the Manny Gens are probably like, no, that sounds like torture. What I do recommend, if you're someone who's multi-passionate, if you're someone who's really creative, you know, you have to remember in the early stages of a business, you're going to operate a lot differently to what you would when you've got a developed business and a team around you, right? You know, so if you're someone who likes to create lots of things, once you've got a 6-7 figure business, like you might have people around you who can bring those things to life, right? Usually when we start our businesses, it's a one-man show and it's just us. And so we have to be mindful that, you know, you really want to build your authority, you know, and be known for something. And so I do tend to recommend niching or experimenting with micro niching in the beginning, right? So even if you're a Manny Gen and you've got all these different things that you're doing, tailoring your content, tailoring your marketing to one kind of micro niche for like maybe a season, right? If anyone wants an example, Victoria Washington is a really great example of someone who micro niches. So she'll have seasons where she's selling to CEOs, right? It's CEOs, it's leadership content. Then she'll have seasons where she's selling, maybe it's a course or a product to people who want to work on their brand, right? And then she'll have a season where she's selling to people who want to learn how to speak. So like experimenting with that, right? But I think it's important that, you know, again, in the beginning, when resources are lean, time is lean, it's all kind of on you, right? I think it can work really well to like focus on, again, one platform and then like one offer at a time and building it to a place where it's kind of flourishing and then branching out. But again, trust your authority over what I'm saying, that if we're too scattered, right, it's like people, and if our marketing and our messaging isn't clear, people can't identify themselves in what we're saying, or we don't give them enough time to. It's like that saying, like if you speak to everyone, you speak to no one, you know. And so again, in the beginning, when making money can be so important and getting things off the ground, like really focusing on this is the problem and this is who I'm speaking to can be really helpful. And so again, so this is probably unsexy as well, but I've really embraced imperfection and failing forwards. You know, I've definitely done things that have felt like failures. I've put things out that have not landed, right? And I think it's really developed my resiliency. So I think, you know, you really want to embrace failing and embrace imperfection and look at each failure as an opportunity, right? I also really encourage experimentation. Like you're not going to get things right the first time. You know, I've put out heaps of offers where like I've done it one time and then I've learnt from it and then I've gone away and I've come back and I've changed the format, right? And so maybe something started out as a mastermind and then I've gone away and I've turned it into a course and then I've gone away and it's become a framework for one-on-one work. So like nothing's ever locked in stone. And I think the leaders that I see really succeeding in not just human design, but in the online space are resilient and they embrace experimenting. And they really seem to get this like done is better than perfect as well. Like you don't want to let perfection hold you back. And know that like everything will keep evolving, right? And if just because you do it once, you know, I think every single, like I don't know anyone who would create something and then not come away after that process and want to change things slightly, right? Because you learn as you're going through the process for most of us. Even if you're not a third line and even if you're a Manny Gen, I think you still want to embrace all of this. And then, so I said this at the beginning, but again, coming back to filtering like any advice you receive through your own design. And so, like I said, I always work with coaches. Like I pretty much, you know, very often will have like some kind of coach or mentor that I'm working with, and I love them, and they're so helpful for me in my process. Like, I love working with people in that way. But I also don't just do what they tell me to do, right? If they're giving me advice, I don't just go and do it, right? I filter everything through my own design, and I always let my authority show me. And again, that's kind of the secret sauce, I really believe. Okay, so I know I've gone over. I was trying to, I'll stop my share and then we can see questions.
That was amazing.
Okay.
I mean, really, that was very good, and I have very strong opinion that everybody love it. So thank you so much. So I'll get, and Victoria will need to ask you for help if you can unmute everybody. And just give me a second. Just need to find a way how to do this one.
I'll enable it. now anyone who
Okay, so now you can unmute yourself and ask the questions to Amy, but the idea will be great if you can raise your hand. So this means we can have some order, so to make sure that not we over talking each other, if it's okay. And so yeah.
I think at the beginning there was a question that quite a few people said they do not know what the quadrite means. So can you actually answer that, Amy?
Yeah, I would love to. So quadrite's to do with variable. So variable is essentially the arrows in the chart, and it's really like the deeper layers of your design. Your quadrite, Nina's here, who's a fellow quadrite. You know, you'll see those arrows in your chart, they're either facing left or right. And so people who have all right facing arrows, Ra always says, like, you're an alien in human form, and we're essentially as receptive as you can be, you know. So people who have more leftness in their arrows, you have parts of you that are more strategic or focused or active. People who are quad right, we take in everything peripherally, and we're essentially more like the raves that are coming post 2027. So if anyone's not across what's happening in 2027, there are actually really great short courses on this on Jovian Archive. I definitely recommend looking into it. And so, but yeah, quad right, you know, there's the concept in human design, there's the leftness and the rightness, right? And so the left is basically what's built the world that we live in as well. So the left, which was the 7-centered being, the Homo sapiens, built this very strategic world, right? People who have rightness, the right is more like the Neanderthals, who were the 5-centered beings before. And Ra uses a really interesting, I think, analogy for this. So he describes rightness being like the bow, right? So the Neanderthals created the bow, the 5-centered beings created the bow, and they used it as this beautiful musical instrument. And it was used for just joy and pleasure. It wasn't, there was no agenda to it, right? Other than they created this thing and realized, oh, I can make beautiful music with it. And then the left, the Homo sapien, came in and turned the bow into a weapon and started to have this agenda to how they use it. And so, you know, leftness is, again, strategic, rightness is receptive. You can think of it like a well, like if you're a quad right, you're here to basically be this well. And people who have leftness or people who can operate strategically, they can be the bucket that draws from your well. So yeah, I could talk for 90 minutes on just being a quad right. It's a lot. But yeah, receptive.
Thank you very much for explaining. I can see that Laura raised a hand. So can you just unmute yourself and ask the question, Laura?
Yeah, hi Amy, thank you so much. That was awesome. I've taken so much from it. I was really interested in your own sort of, I guess, educational journey with astrology and human design. How long you were maybe learning before you started your business, or if you started your business early on. And also, if it's not too much to ask, I have some shared channels with you. So I was really interested in how your channels of judgment and acceptance and potentially the others have helped you in your business as well.
Those channels are interesting together, being judgment and opinions. Like has been very interesting for my deconditioning. So firstly, so my education journey, so I started with astrology. So I always had an interest in astrology and was reading books from when I was a teenager. And it was the thing in 2017 when I was working in fashion, I reached this point where I was, you know, I'm a first line. So study is always really energizing for me. Like I really love learning. And I reached this point where I was so bitter and burnt out as a projector in my career that I was like, I need to just study something for fun because I'm just not enjoying life right now. And so I decided to study astrology. So I studied astrology for 18 months before I launched my business in the June of 2018. I found human design in the 2017. And what happened is I slowly learnt human design. So when I actually started my business in 2018, I was primarily doing astrology readings, and not many people actually knew human design then. And so what was happening for me is that I was doing an astrology reading, or people were coming to me for astrology readings, and I would be kind of saying like, oh, well, I've got this other chart, and do you want to look at your human design as well, and all the things. So I went about it probably in a little bit of a different way because human design was so new back then. And what I did was I actually just slowly integrated human design into my readings. So at the time, because it's a lot, like when you're combining astrology and human design in one reading, it can actually be a lot of information. So that really taught me to prioritize what's most important in the chart. But so in the beginning, I think even in the beginning, I was just talking about like type, strategy, authority, maybe definition and profile, you know, and just gradually weaved in more and more. And then there was a flip for me in like maybe late 2019. There was a real flip where everyone started coming to me for human design readings. And then the human design chart became like more of the focus. And I would just weave in bits of what I see in someone's astrology chart. And so most of my astrology education was done. I mean, I believe in learning from lots of different teachers, and that's what I've done with both systems. So I've learnt with quite a lot of astrologers, mostly through Astrology University, through their platform, some directly through astrologers. And then I've learnt with quite a lot of people in human design, taken their courses. I've also done a lot of education from Jovian Archive. It's probably where I've spent the most money, like on Jovian Archive. And then I've also done like private mentoring with trained analysts. And I'm still learning too. I'm still taking courses. I don't think, you know, I think if you enter these systems, like most of us, you know, I think I have a real hunger for knowledge. So like I'm still always taking human design and astrology courses now.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you.
My pleasure. And then, sorry, what was the other part of your question? Oh, my channels. Yeah.
Oh, your channels, compliment and acceptance.
Yeah, acceptance is really helpful. I think for me, I actually think it's why I can teach, you know, or I think it's the energy in my chart that's really helped me teach human design and astrology together, like that ability to organize data. Also being a quad right, I think that really helps me because I take in so much. And, you know, for me with human design and astrology, there's no differentiation. Like I actually just see the systems all interwoven and overlapping. But that channel, I think, has really helped me structure and organize information and data and structure the way I teach the systems in like a linear kind of way. Judgment, look, judgment has definitely got me into trouble when I've been in my not self, right? So is acceptance. Like I can be in my not self, I can be a judgy, opinionated person, right? And I think for me, remembering that both those channels are collective has been really important. Like they're not meant to be turned in on myself. They're not meant to be used personally. I think judgment comes in handy, or has come in handy for me, I believe, in seeing where things were maybe, not that there were imperfections, but maybe just seeing how things could be better, right? How could things be better? And for me, that's really been in the synthesis of human design with astrology, and how can we make this more effective, also as a projector. And then I do have struggle too. I think struggle's been really important for me in business. I think this is what's really given me like kind of the grit and the determination to like go after what's really meaningful for me.
Thank you so much. Thanks for everything.
My pleasure. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you, Amy. I can see that Natalie is raising hand. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Natalie.
So wonderful to hear all your wonderful knowledge, and that you're repetitive with a lot of this just goes to show how you live it. So I love this. And one thing I've never asked you, Amy, that I'd love to know is, which offers did you actually focus on early on in your business that have helped you the most with your visibility and your growth?
Thank you, Natalie. I've just realized it's you, Natalie. I was like, I couldn't tell your voice at the beginning. Anyway, we know each other. So definitely in the beginning, it was readings. It was readings and it was reports. So I actually used to hand make my reports. And as a quad write, I got really, really burnt out doing that. It was way too focused, which is why like I love what the guys have done here with body graph charts, because I think it's such a great tool to make them sustainable. Because for me, what happened was I got too busy with the reports and it became so stressful and it felt like a lot of pressure. And I remember I even hired someone to help me with it. It just was, it didn't feel good, right? So I only did the reports for like 18 months and then I stopped maybe early 2020 until we were able to automate them. So it was readings and reports. Then I moved into like I had a program called Enriched. So once I had like a steady income, it was really the reports that helped me leave my job at the time. But once I had like a really steady kind of flow with readings and the reports, I did like a small, I called it a mastermind at the time. It was probably more like a course / group coaching. It was called Enriched, and it was like a human design business program. And I ran that a few times. And even now I look at that and I'm like, oh, I might bring that back. You know, like it's one of those offers where I'm like, there's a lot in that. I might actually do that again. But it's changed and evolved like so many times now.
Okay, love it. That is super helpful. And I was wondering if it was the reports, which is part of the reason why I'm here right now. So
they're so good.
Yeah.
They're such a good, I think I love the reports because I think they're really cost effective. You know, like to get a reading with someone's usually a few $100s, whereas if someone can get a report from you, it's way more cost effective for them. And I find for a lot of people, having that resource that they can digest slowly helps. Like they might read a section on this and then just sit with it and integrate, and they might come back, you know. And I still have people who got my reports back in 2018 messaging me and telling me like they still look at it, like they've got it printed out or whatever. So I think the reports can be, if you can do them really well, I think now with the reports, you kind of want to have a point of differentiation, which I know you do, Natalie, in everything you specialize in, but having like a point of differentiation can be really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. So appreciated. And I still look at my report from you all the time, which is so lovely. So thanks, Amy.
Thanks, hon.
Brilliant. We have Sarah asking, have you ever used paid advertising to sell the reports?
No, I've experimented. We might in the future. No, not in the beginning. The only thing I've experimented with was paid ads on Pinterest, and that's just in the last few months, and like small amounts, but never on Instagram, never for Google, nothing like that. It was all organic.
What platforms would you advise to use for advertising yourself? Which channels would you advise to use for very beginner when you start your business? How to attract that very first few people, you know, to your business, to your website? What first few steps you have to take?
Yeah, I think it's about identifying the platform that feels best for you. You know, for me, Instagram always felt good because I have a design background. I'm really visual. I like aesthetics, you know, so Instagram for me was like the natural platform to build. But I've had clients who've had really great success on LinkedIn, you know, people who've come from a more professional background. I have clients who really like to write, and so they have more success on Facebook. I really think Pinterest is underrated. I think Pinterest and YouTube, I feel for the future are really, really great platforms to prioritize, like even one of them. But I think it's more about what works for you, right? So if you're someone who likes to create video, like YouTube could be a really great space for you. So yeah, I don't think there's any like right or wrong for that.
Yeah, I've seen the comment of one of the attendees saying that it's really challenging. For example, okay, maybe you feel that Instagram is right for you, but how to actually, be those algorithms, how to actually stand out, how to actually, get those followers, how to increase that number, what the strategies to follow, and what to do. Sometimes you can feel this of like stuck and frustrated,
Totally. Yeah. Look, and to be honest, like I built my Instagram for nearly 18 months before it really got any traction. I think if you're coming into the online space, you want to, people say like you commit for 5 years, come in, like ideally you're passionate about the work that you're doing, right? Like, and so for me, it was like, I'm going to keep doing this until people pay attention. I'm going to keep creating until I find what works and what resonates. So like those first 18 months for me was a lot of experimenting with different types of content and how I wanted to share. I really believe profile can be like a really beautiful part of your design to like bring to the forefront of whatever social media platform that you do. This is something Natalie actually teaches really beautifully, who was just talking, but this could be a whole other webinar on profile. But like for me as a 5-1, I've always focused on solutions and problem solving, and then also educational content as a first line, right? And that tends to be what people like resonate with the most from me. So I think understanding, again, your chart, applying that to like the content that you create, and then just keep sharing, just keep sharing as much as you can. And again, like you'll cringe, right? Like I look back at the stuff, some of the content I created in that first year of my business, and I cringe, right? And like now I'm like, oh my goodness, but it was all part of the process. Yeah, so again, I would say focus on one platform, right? So if you're going to do Instagram, like really do Instagram. It can also help to come up with things like your brand, once you've got like your branding done, like coming up with like brand pillars for like specific things you might talk about. So like I was saying, like in the presentation, people buy into you. Human design is just a system that you use. So like what other parts of who you are, what skills are you bringing, what problems are you solving that you can really focus on as being part of your brand pillars and what you talk about. Yeah, but other than that, it's pretty nuanced, like person to person, like strategy wise.
Fantastic. And what parts of the chart do you suggest looking at to know what is the most authentic content to share to inspire the audience?
Definitely your channels. If you're a reflector, that won't really apply in the same way, but definitely I think channels. Your conscious sun placement. If anyone hasn't dived into the gene keys are really great for this too. Like conscious sun, your unconscious Mars can be a big one. And your profile, and then also if you're interested in your astrology, like getting to know your rising sign as well can be a really big one, and getting to know the sign that your midheaven is in. So like I said at the beginning, like I'm a Gemini midheaven, and so even when it comes to my branding, the use of like white and light colors and spaciousness was always like me wanting to bring that Gemini energy to the front. And I'm a Leo rising, so I also, in the beginning of my business, and then I've just started to do it again recently, I'm bringing in more like deep reds and things like that now, so yeah, but that's more to do with the branding, but getting familiar with those things: conscious sun, unconscious Mars, rising sign, midheaven sign, and then your channels.
Thank you, Amy. Next question would be, how did you discover your brand pillars?
Yeah, so for me, it developed over time. I think your brand pillars will relate to your experience as well. So for me, I come from a business background. I worked really intimately with CEOs in my career. And so that was always like an overarching energy in my business. And so working out what problems are you solving, that's going to kind of inform the brand pillars that you would have, which, and then, you know, and so brand pillars as well can be things like, for me, even like personal things as well. Like I think when you're thinking of your brand, it can be the problems that you're solving, but then also like, what is it about you that people might buy into? So for me, even sharing about my dog, you know, like, and those parts of my personal life, even sharing about like the area that I live in, the way I like to live my life, you know, that's all kind of a part of it. Yeah, does that answer that?
Yes, I think,
Thank
yeah,
you.
so I think it's time, guys. I want to just thank you for everybody who was asking these questions, and of course, a huge thank you, Amy, for spending time with us. I really, really appreciate. I mean, I cannot say thank you enough. I can feel that how much value you bring to people and help you so much. So I wanna finish this session, and this recording gonna be uploaded to YouTube maybe tomorrow, after tomorrow, and once again, thanks so much, Amy, and bye to everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So, bye.
Bye-bye.